Hey everyone, Reaper here again, this time with a new series. The series is called Favorite Comic Books. It's sort of like a takeoff of what E.T. Nick does when he shows his favorite comic and he talks about it and all that stuff. So I figured I'd do the same thing, so I'm totally copying him. Not an original idea. So with that being said, I figure I would, with this series, I would show two books, talk to you a little bit about why they're my favorite, and so forth. So before I get started, as you may notice, I'm no longer have the headphones on. I'm using Patrick's microphone that he purchased for me for my birthday. So hopefully the sound is going to be coming in better. I'm hoping to use this for future videos and so forth. I'm getting tired of the headphones, and the sound was always not the greatest with that. So hopefully this is working out well. So we'll start. Anybody that's been a follower of my channel for several years knows that this book I'm about to show is definitely one of my favorites. And here we go. Start with a bang. Detective Comics 140, the first appearance of the Riddler. Why is this book my favorite? Is it because of the artwork? Well, I've only read this book in reprint. I've never owned this outside the slab. I purchased this book. It's a 3.5 restoration. It has, the restoration on this book is a little bit of glue on the spine. Hopefully in the future, I've been saying this, I've said this for a couple of times, I might want to try to get the restoration removed. I couldn't care less if the grade goes down. The grade goes down, the grade goes down. That's to be expected. But I don't know if the restoration can be removed because, sometimes even though it says, what does it say exactly here? It says small amount of glue on the spine of the cover. Well, sometimes a small amount of glue on the spine of a cover is not a small amount. So we'll see what happens. But I didn't buy this book thinking that I could have the restoration removed. I bought it because I wanted it. And I first started liking the Riddler when the Batman 66 series was on reruns after the Batman 89 movie came out. When the Batman 89 movie came out, it was very popular. Most of us that lived through that time period probably remember how popular that movie was and how popular Batman was. So anyway, Channel 11, or at least up here in the Northeast, Channel 11, around 5 o'clock, between 5 and 6, would run the 66 reruns, okay, from 5 to 6 every weeknight. So around that time period is when I really got introduced to Batman, the Batman universe. I got introduced to Robin, and I remember a few months after that, some people in school had the Death in the Family reprints and reading about the death of Robin and all that stuff. So I thought it was pretty cool. But that's when I started getting introduced to the Batman villains, and the Riddler being my favorite. I found that the Riddler was, if I were to be a villain in the Batman universe, I've always thought of myself as probably being something close to the Riddler. Even though nowadays I probably think I wouldn't be the Riddler, I'd probably be more the Scarecrow for other reasons. But I've always liked the Riddler because I thought he was flamboyant, I thought he was colorful, and I thought he was played very well by Frank Gorshin in that very over-the-top performance. I like the Joker very much too, but I've always liked the Riddler a little bit more. So my introduction to the character did not come from the comic books. It came from the TV series. I wouldn't start reading comics for some time later, after the Batman 89 movie, after 89 when I got introduced to the Riddler. But that's where my interest came in him. Now the artwork, like I said, I read this in reprint form. Obviously never got a chance to read it in hand, the original copy. I think the cover is nice. I think the Detective Comics 142 cover is a little bit better. But the cover's not bad. Win Mortimer cover. The artwork inside, Dick Sprang, wasn't bad. Not bad. Not the greatest either, I don't think, but not bad. And I heard now the Riddler is going to be one of the villains in the Batman movie. So the actor was named, who's playing him? I don't know his name. Now the last book for this series is another one that's probably not going to surprise anybody. Crime Patrol 15, the first appearance of the Crypt Keeper. Now, this one right here is very much like the Detective 140. I got introduced to the character, the Crypt Keeper, through the TV series, Tales from the Crypt, that started in '89. Right around, I think it was like within a week or two after the Batman '89 movie came out. I saw the first episode the first night, and I fell in love with the series. I loved those type of anthology series because I used to watch The Twilight Zone in reruns, obviously, in the '80s, and I remember some of the I guess the re-imaging of the series in the mid '80s and stuff and so forth. I remember that. I remember Tales from the Dark Side. So I liked those anthology type TV series. And that's why I watched Tales from the Crypt, and it was more adult oriented because it was on HBO. But that's when I first got introduced to the Crypt Keeper. I wasn't a comic book fan. I wasn't reading the reprints or the actual issues from the 50s or the 70s and 80s with the reprints and all that. I didn't get introduced to that until about a year after the show went on the air in 1990, when I really started taking an interest in Tales from the Crypt and started to look, hey, maybe I'll find some of these comics. These are like comics I'd never even heard of. And that's when when I got introduced to the reprints, and the Gladstone reprints at that time. There have been many reprints over the decades. I know there was East Coast Comics that did reprints in the early 70s, which were really good. I think they were pretty good quality. There were the Russ Cochran hardcover black and white ones, which I eventually got, all of them, for Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, and Haunt of Fear. And then you had the Gladstone reprints and the Gemstone reprints, and there are a bunch of other reprints that came out. So if you were an EC fan, you had reprints of Tales from the Crypt, Weird Science, crime suspense stories, all of that, Vault of Horror, Haunt of Fear. So there was plenty out there for you to feast your eyes on if you couldn't get the original material. So that's where my interest came from the TV series. And both of these characters, the Riddler and the Crypt Keeper, were definitely scene stealing when they were on, sorry about the glare, when they were on TV. Frank Gorshin, like I mentioned earlier, is over-the-top performance. And even John Kasser, who voiced the Crypt Keeper. I mean, a lot of us associate that man's voice to the Crypt Keeper. Now, I know the EC purists out there that were collecting the original ECs in the 80s and in the 70s probably weren't so fond of the Crypt Keeper puppet. But I still think that some of them enjoyed the series as much as the people that weren't collectors. I've often said that, Tales from the Crypt made me a comic book collector. It really did. I mean, I think the superhero books kept me a comic book collector, right? Like X-Men and Spider-Man and so forth. But it wasn't until I saw the Crypt Keeper and started taking an interest in Tales from the Crypt, that's when I started buying comics. And it's been one hell of a ride. So that is why that these two books right here are some of my absolute favorites in my collection. Thank you for watching, and take care. Bye-bye.